Yes, welcome in. Another episode of the camp. Working our way towards spring practice, Jesse. It still feels quite a ways away. Not a ton going on right now.
No, there are obviously a lot going on inside the program because they're working out. But in terms of access and availability and news, there isn't. But good news. We got a fun interview coming.
We do. We were joined by Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes for about a half an hour. Got to chat with him. He is a detailed individual. Would you say he's a detailed individual?
I certainly would. But if you're going to be an offensive coordinator of a major college program, you better be detailed.
Yeah, he gets into a lot. Like I feel like, again, you'll hear it here in a minute. I feel like a lot of our questions were like maybe surface level. I don't know that there were a couple that dug in there, but there are a lot of more surface level, and he just went deep. And so that was I appreciate that about him when we talk about like what the offense could potentially look like as compared to last year, or the different things that he has to like change the offense around the personnel. Like he went deep into that. And so I think people will get some insight out of it for sure. But yeah, we had a good conversation with him, and we'll get that here in just a second. Before we do, Home Field Apparel is the official apparel sponsor of the camp. They have unmatched vintage gear in the college game, over 180 colleges right now, and I'm sure they're going to continue adding them as we go along, but a ton of new Wisconsin stuff, including these hockey sweaters that they just released in the last week. And it's two versions. They have a women's version, which is the Wisconsin women's version, which is the motion W on it. And then they got the men's version of it with the Wisconsin, diagonally. And then on the side, or on the patch, or on the arm, I should say, they have a patch of the old school Bucky. So it's a good looking sweatshirt. Go check it out. Homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code Bucky24 for 15% off your first purchase. Do we just want to jump into that right away? Let's just jump into it. Our interview with Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. We do welcome in a special guest. It is Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. Jeff, we appreciate you taking the time.
My pleasure.
So I wanted to start with this. You've been here now, what, almost 2 months? Are you settling in here a little bit in Madison, or is it just football?
Somebody asked me that today, and I said if I was settling in, and I said, ask me in August. That's the time when you feel settled in as a new coach, because early on, you're just trying to get to know your players and you're recruiting on the front end, and then installing a new offense, and then there's spring ball, and then more recruiting, and then you're into the summer camp schedule, and official visits, which happen now in June, and then a little vacation, and then by that time, hopefully you're in somewhat of a routine. You got your family in town, you got a house, and you feel like a normal human again. But for about 6 months, it's not really that way.
Jeff, you mentioned previously when you talked to us that the first couple of weeks were spent looking at quarterbacks, figuring out the quarterback coach situation. Now that those things are behind you, what does a typical day look like for you? Are you in the office before the sun rises? And obviously it's setting behind you, but how long are you in the office? What does it look like when you're trying to learn about your players and everything that goes into coming into a new school?
Yeah, it varies a little bit. I'm here. I try to get in early. And we've got, times, guys are working out in the mornings, and, some days we'll have a little bit of time to do some football meetings with them. And so I try to get in early enough to, review what I'm going to do with the players, or review what we're going to do with the staff that day, and try to make sure I got my plan together. And then this time of year, I'm not usually here super late. I'm usually out around dinner time, around 6 or something like that. And I do sometimes find my way to football some way or another once I'm back at the apartment anyway, though. So, now that we've got iPads and, laptops that you can take with you, you can do work anywhere, right? So whether it's recruiting or watching a little more film, or maybe putting together a little piece of a presentation I'm going to do with the offense the next day, sometimes I'm tinkering with things in the evening too.
So you've been able to adjust your offense to different personnel, like wherever you've been. How does that process start, and where are you at right now in that process? Because I know you said you don't necessarily watch last year's film to learn about guys, but you have to know about some of their abilities and trying to figure out exactly how you want everything to work.
Yes, you do, but I think there's for most of us there's a general playbook. This is our system, and this contains the plays that we run, and you could run those plays in different ways. So, for instance, maybe this particular play, you want to run a wide zone play to a tight end side out of 12 personnel, and then you want to throw a play action pass that looks similar. One particular year, I might do that under center and do it with a couple of really big physical tight ends. And then in another setting, I might have a quarterback that plays a lot better from the gun, or maybe he's more of a runner. So we like to have him in the gun so that we can present that threat more often. And so you could run the same play, but maybe you do it from the gun or from pistol. Maybe one year you're a little bit more 11 personnel oriented than 12 personnel, just because of your skill set or what your team does best. Maybe you got a great slot receiver and you want to keep that guy on the field a little bit more. And so you might run the same play in 11 personnel, and you might throw a similar play action, but now you're throwing it to a slot receiver instead of a second tight end. Or you might have a guy that's a skilled athlete that's really good, on fly sweeps, or bringing him in an option phase with an orbit type motion or something like that to present him as part of the run threat as well, and add another layer to your play action. And so you might have that as part of the concept too. And so you fake that with that guy, and then you're still run your wide zone play, or you throw a similar play action, but now with a different presentation. And so it just kind of the offense evolves as you begin to get to know your players a little bit more. But I think you start with a general playbook, and then it goes a number of different directions, like the branches on a tree, and all those things. One of the things that I did when I first became a coordinator is I said that I wanted to have an offense that was versatile and flexible enough that we could take advantage of all those different player types. And certainly it starts with your quarterback, and then it goes to your offensive line, and then all the different skilled athletes.
You obviously are trying to tailor a game plan in part to the personnel that you have. And I know you haven't had a practice yet. When you talked before, you mentioned that I think it was comments that were music to the ears of people that grew accustomed to Wisconsin football over the years, the physicality, wanting to establish the run. Are there certain staples that you think will be the biggest differences in what you bring compared to what people have come to expect of Wisconsin football over those 2 or 3 decades? Like I obviously done some cursory studying of what you did previously, and there seem to be some differences, but can you explain maybe what you think those will be?
Well, I would speak a little bit more generically, and I guess maybe compare myself to, or compare what we would like to be as an offense, in relation to spread offenses in general, or maybe what most of college football is doing now, as opposed to what was done here previously in the last couple of years, so that I'm not making any direct comparisons, or so that it doesn't feel that I'm throwing shade at anybody or anything that was done. But I think, there are a lot of different ways to play football. I think you can, generally speaking, for probably, I don't know, 90% of college and NFL teams, you could probably say you have two major categories of teams. Ones that would be more spread based, and within that you can have air raid systems. You could have more true spread 10 personnel teams where they very seldom attach tight ends. You could have teams that that play with a tight end most of the time on the field. But within that, you have certain elements that typically are true, and that is, you're typically not huddling. You're usually playing at a faster pace. You're usually in the shotgun, and you typically don't employ more than one tight end very often. And then the other type, I would say, would be what I would call an NFL style offense. That's a very broad term, just as spread offense is a very generic term now too. But if you watch NFL teams, you find a little bit of everything there. And so you see a lot more variety in presentation, in tempo, in play type. And so to start with, you see teams that play with 11 personnel for sure, but also 12 personnel, 13 personnel, maybe even 14 or 23 personnel on the goal line. Then you would see teams that huddle more often than they don't. You would see a greater variety in presentation. And so when I say presentation, that could be the initial formation or something that begins in one formation and ends in a different one, either through a shift, a motion, or a combination of the two. You see more checking of plays specifically by the quarterback, as opposed to lookovers to the sideline to get a play call from the coach, and then back to the communication piece from the quarterback to the offensive line. A more deliberate pace of play, a greater variety in play type, run types, types of protection, especially when it comes to play action protection. And so I think all of those things are things that you'll see a little bit more from us, or a lot more from us, maybe than what has been seen or what is typically seen from quote unquote spread offense again.
This is a little bit of a joke, but also kind of, I'm kind of being serious. There was a whole lot of talk last year about under center or out of shotgun on 3rd and 4th and short. And people around here up in arms anytime it was run out of shotgun. Where do you come down when it's short yardage, goal line? Where is your thought? And I'm assuming it's probably just based on the team that you're facing, or maybe that what you guys feel best about yourselves.
Yeah, so there have been times where I was almost exclusively under center in those situations. There have been other times where we've been more shotgun than not. And then there have been times where we've been a combination of the two. And so I think one of the things that people probably sometimes forget about is, you do take certain pieces of the game away when you get in the shotgun. You take away the quarterback sneak or the threat of a quarterback sneak. You take away the ability for a quick hitting fullback dive or belly play or something like that. But you also take away the quarterback as a run threat. And so if you have a quarterback, I shouldn't say you take it away. You take away most of the ways that people would typically run with the quarterback. You could still run some form of option play or quarterback zone play, but teams that are of either of the categories that I talked about earlier typically aren't doing that from under center. You're seeing that more from option teams. So I think when you have a quarterback that is a legitimate run threat, this guy's a guy that could pull his own read and not only make a first down, but maybe even create an explosive play, or you're a team that runs some option, then you take that piece away from your offense and you eliminate a certain threat for the defense. And so I think there are positives to both. And because of that, I like to have the ability to do both. But I think there's certainly value in being under center in general. I was just talking with with someone this weekend about this, and they were asking why do you get under center? Why not be in the shotgun all the time? Because it seems like most high school kids come in accustomed to being in the gun and are more comfortable with that. Why don't you just do that all the time? And I think as a general principle, there are a lot of ways to run the football that are better when you're under center. On top of that, and even more significant maybe, is the ability to play action pass from under center. You just have the ability to hide the football from the defense, and you have the ability to sell the play action, the run action of the play longer than if you're in the gun. You're waiting for the ball to hit the quarterback's hands, and then you got a quick flash, and then you're into your drop. And so I think those things certainly come into play in those situations, as well as the potential for a quarterback sneak.
Speaking of quarterback play, you had to do some research and figure out what this roster would look like in a very short time when you got here. What do you like about Billy Edwards Jr., and what do you also see in Danny O'Neil to bring both them in?
So with Billy, he was one of my top guys early on, and really felt like he was the whole package. I thought he was a big guy that was athletic enough to be a run threat, has good feel for the pocket, has the ability to not just be a guy that can escape trouble when he needs to, but is also a guy that can legitimately pull a zone read and go get you some yards. I like his size. I've played with quarterbacks who are smaller guys, and some of those guys bring some things to the table that are real positives as well. But it certainly eliminates some of the vision problems that you deal with when you have a guy that's 6'2 plus, 6'3 or 6'4 ideally, because they can see over the top of those guys. And so it truly allows you to throw the ball anywhere on the field. Some of those guys who aren't as big struggle just to see over those big people in front of them, particularly in the middle of the field. And so he brings all of that with his size and athleticism. And then I just love what he's all about. He loves football. You see his passion, even though he's a guy that's not real overstated or real exuberant in terms of his personality. He's outgoing enough that he brings some energy. He's got strong leadership. And I've seen that even more since he's been here. He's tough, can take a hit and still make the throw and not flinch in the pocket. And then obviously, I think he's got the arm talent to make the throws that we'll need a guy to make in the pocket. So liked all those things from him. Danny was a little bit different, not as big, certainly not as polished because he's just a freshman. But just kind of had something about him, there's that thing sometimes when you're watching a player and you're going, I don't know exactly what it is about this guy, but I kind of like him. He's kind of a baller, and I would put Danny in that category. But one of the things that stuck out to me about his film is playing as a freshman against good competition, and I just never saw him flinch. I never saw a guy that looked nervous. I never saw a guy that looked overly concerned about the rush or about the play clock or any of those things that often make quarterbacks, especially young quarterbacks, uncomfortable. He just seemed really, really poised and confident. And I think that if you can show that as a freshman playing at this level, then I think that there's only more good in front of him, particularly with more time to grow and develop.
I know it's only been a couple of weeks or 3 weeks maybe since they've been back for workouts, but have you grown to learn more about Carter Smith at this point?
A little bit. Again, we can only do a very small amount with the guys right now, but Carter had some of those same things I was talking about with Danny, just, raw, but really athletic and just sort of a guy that was just always going to make a play, whether he's making a play with his feet or whether he's making a play with his arm. It just really has a knack for finding a way to make the throw, make a run, or make a run that turns into a throw. And just in getting to know him a little bit, I would say the thing that sticks out to me is just a real mature confidence for a young guy. Very seems very comfortable in his own skin.
Everything always starts with an offensive line. You've coached a lot of them. As you're getting to know this group, what has stood out about some of the pieces you've got to work with and what they could be molded into this year?
Hard to say, a little bit harder to say with them, just because you can't see nearly as much with linemen as you can some of the other guys, guys who are out there running and running routes, doing things that are a little bit easier to see. Linemen, so much of it is contact and what you can do with applied force directly against you. But I would say the thing that sticks out to me the most about these guys so far is just their willingness. They are extremely eager to learn something new, and I think are really fired up to be headed in a new direction. And there's a natural pull for me towards them, and probably some of that on their end too, towards a guy who's played the position and talks about getting dirty and pushing people around and choking guys out. I think, that kind of falls into their wheelhouse.
Speaking of some of the guys that are able to run around, you're able to see a little bit. One of the other ones that you brought in from the transfer portal was a tight end in Tanner Koziol. Wisconsin has pretty good history of tight ends. You can go on down the line for the last 20 years. Last 2 years, they haven't really necessarily been involved heavily. When you see some of what he was able to do at his previous stop, does it get you a little bit excited what he could bring to your offense?
Yeah, for sure. And I would say that's one of the differences between a spread offense typically and what I'd categorize more as an NFL style offense as well. And I use that term NFL style because I don't like the moniker pro style, because it brings with it this vision of I formation, 3 yards in a cloud of dust type mentality. And it's not that at all. It's more variety and versatility. But part of what goes along with that, I think, is a greater utilization of tight ends. You're using tight ends more, meaning first, you just have more of them typically on your roster, and you're playing with more of them more frequently. So, for example, in my 3 years at Baylor, we had more snaps by multiple tight end formations than anybody else in the Big 12. We had more tight end catches than anyone in the league, and we had more touchdowns by tight ends than other teams in the league. And so I think that just goes along with this style of offense. Typically, it doesn't have to. Certainly, there are some teams in the NFL that play a lot more in 11 than in 12 or 13. But I think you see, by and large, more NFL-style offenses playing with more tight ends on the field. And then most of them are positioning those guys in different spots. And so they're not just lining up next to the offensive tackle with his hand in the dirt, not just in a wing, not just in the slot, but also all the way out at receiver one, maybe in the backfield, maybe to the boundary as receiver one, or as the only receiver lined up to that side. And so I think all of that lends itself to greater usage and greater opportunities for those guys. In terms of Tanner himself, yeah, I liked him a lot. Even before I got here, I was trying to recruit him at Kansas. And so then when I got here, one of my first questions was, hey, do we need a tight end? Because I think I know the guy that I'd like to get. And certainly it was a much easier sell here based on what we can offer, and just regionally it made a lot of sense for him. But really like him, love his skill set, huge catch radius, and just an exceptional ability to track the ball and make a play on it when it's in the air.
You can get to a play any number of ways, but one of the things that certainly caught people's attention the last couple of years was not necessarily having a true defined fullback. I don't know where you stand on that, or whether you've had conversations with people about moving them around in some different ways to to get to a plan that helps establish that type of physicality?
About just playing with a fullback in general?
Yeah.
Yeah, everywhere that I've been, we've had somebody like that. My years at BYU, we had a guy that was definitely built like a fullback and played that position for us and did it well, and was also a tight end that played in a wing a fair amount. My years at Baylor, my first 2 years actually, our starting Mike linebacker was our fullback, and so we just didn't necessarily have the body type on offense when I got there that fit that. And so I said it was important enough in our offense that I needed to find someone who could do it. And so I asked the defensive coaches and our head coach, can I kind of have tryouts? Can I try out some of these guys? And, at that time I was just saying, hey, I need a guy who can do this for us on goal line and short yardage. And our starting Mike linebacker ended up being really natural at it and got a bunch of first downs and touchdowns for us by running some of those fullback plays and catching the ball out of the backfield as well. He just happened to have really good hands. And then my last year, we had after he left, we had a guy who had come on and joined the team and became our fullback. And usually those guys are guys who are already tight ends that just fit that position a little bit better. And then we had a guy like that at Kansas last year. And so I certainly believe in it and value it and think that they can bring another dimension to the offense. And, I'd like to think that they make the job of the defense more challenging, especially when it's a guy that could be on the field playing a traditional tight end spot or a fullback spot, so that when you're putting them on the field, they don't know you're immediately going to a fullback type formation. So that would be the ideal, and hopefully we'll have that here as well.
That kind of sounds like Jackson Aker to me. I don't know. Maybe I'll throw it out there. But in terms of the other guys in the backfield, you have obviously some young guys that you've been able to maybe get to know a little bit more since you've been here with Darian Dupree and Dylan Jones and Cade Yakimelli. What have you seen from some of the running backs to this point in just a little bit that you've gotten to see them?
Yeah, I would say kind of like I did with the offensive line. It's hard to tell a lot about a running back until they're actually getting hit. It's just such a contact position, and so much of it is determined when they're actually having to make live cuts. And by that, I don't necessarily mean live being tackled, although that's the truest evaluation for a running back. But anybody could get out there and just run a track. And so I say, okay, this is our track when we're running power, and this is our track when we're running inside zone. And I could get anybody. I could get one of our fat offensive linemen to go out there and do that. Anybody could run a track. All right. Who can run that track and then make a last second decision whether the ball should go in the A gap or the front side C gap, or maybe even bounce back to the backside C gap, and who can make that decision and make it accurately, who can do it and burst through the hole with speed and aggression, who has the contact balance to work his way through a hit at the second level and get to the third level, who has the speed to take it from a 6-yard gain to a 60-yard gain. All those things are hard to say until you really get into real football. But I would say from all the guys that I'm seeing right now, I think we've got a stable that we're going to like, and I think it's good when you have competition, especially at that position. That's one of, if not the most physical position in football. You would typically say it's the line, and certainly both sides of the line are extremely physical. But those collisions typically are happening fairly close, and there's an even amount of fair pressure being applied by both sides. When you're the running back, every play you're the target, that you have the ball in your hands, and people are hitting you from multiple directions and multiple people almost simultaneously. So it's a really physical position, and so you're going to need multiple people who can play that spot. So I think competition is good anywhere, but especially so there.
Jeff, my last question for you. Zach may have one more, but you're coming into a time where the Big Ten is harder than ever. Obviously, faced expansion in a lot of these conferences, and Wisconsin has a tremendously difficult schedule. How do you approach the challenge at hand here to try and elevate this offense? And do you feel a sense of pressure, or do you kind of let that not be a part of your thought process when you're trying to build an offense and elevate a program?
I think there's pressure in this job in general, but I think there's pressure in a lot of jobs, and pressure is what you allow it to be. And I have a lot of peace about my life and the fact that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, and that I'm right in the middle of my calling and my purpose. And that brings some peace to me, in the fact that I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm doing what I was meant to do. I think I enjoy it so much, and I love the challenge so much that I see the opportunity every day. I don't see the pressure. I don't see the stress. I don't know, maybe when I was a little bit younger, maybe I felt it a little bit more. Even as an offensive line coach, I remember feeling the pressure in particular big games. But regardless of the schedule, regardless of the conference, regardless of the level, whether you're talking about NFL, college, or high school coaching, there's pressure everywhere in sports now. And if that's something that you're focused on, then I don't know that you're going to do as well as you could. So I guess I see the opportunity a little bit more than I do the pressure, and I certainly recognize the challenge. But the challenge is what excites me. It's what I wake up for, and I'm excited about every day. The schedule itself, the competition level. I think most of the time that I've been in this business, I've been in a similar position, in that on any given Saturday, you could probably win or lose the game. And, that's true in this league. It was true when I coached 2 different times in the SEC. I coached in the Big 12 3 different times, where we had a very, very balanced league with a lot of parity. And so, I don't know. I'm not one that really thinks much about the pressure or the stress that comes with that. I'm excited about the opportunity.
Well, Jeff, we really appreciate the time. We're looking forward to seeing your group in spring ball coming up. About 6 weeks from now, maybe 7 weeks, and looking to see what this new offense looks like. But do appreciate your time.
I'm looking forward to it as well. Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
All right, there he was, Wisconsin offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. Appreciate his time, and a lot of information there that we will digest as we go along here. But that's the first time we've had a chance to talk to him on the program. I know you had an opportunity a couple weeks ago to chat with him. He's I feel like he's settling in a little bit more, but I did find it funny at the beginning of the interview, like, yeah, I'll let you know in August how I'm settling in, because right now it's just boom, 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 go. But of the answers that he had, I thought the last one that he gave you about where his mind was in terms of pressure, because he is stepping into what I think we both would agree is a very pressure-packed situation when you have an offense that has performed the way the Wisconsin offense has the last 2 years. It is clearly a huge year for Luke Fickell, and he needs the offense to play its part. But he seemed pretty relaxed and not overly concerned or pressure or feeling any of that pressure.
I appreciated his honesty, because we're all human, and he acknowledged that there were stretches in his coaching career earlier where he felt some of that pressure if there was a big game or a big moment. And I completely understand where he's coming from. And I also think it speaks to where he's at now, the level of confidence and comfort he has in himself as a coach, as an offensive coordinator, having now done this at 3 schools previously, to go into this situation not necessarily feeling that level of pressure. That doesn't mean he's not going to work very hard along with the rest of the staff to do extremely well, but you have to rely on some of the things you've done that have been successful before and know that you can accomplish it this year. But certainly we know externally what is at stake here, with a tremendously difficult schedule going into year 3 of the Luke Fickell era that has not met expectations. That in previous 2 seasons collectively is under 500, and they have a lot of work to do. But certainly it looks like with Jeff Grimes, they've got a person in place that matches what Luke wants out of this offense.
He does. And again, he has not seen a lot of these guys play a ton of football, right? Like he doesn't know a ton about what they're capable of. And I think that's probably what he's still learning. And he's got some new guys on his offensive coaching staff, including Jordan Reed and wide receivers coach, that are also learning about their guys. The thing about Tanner Koziel was interesting to me, the fact that he was recruiting him when he was at Kansas, and he shows up here and goes, do you think you guys need a tight end? And I think I got one for you. And it proved to be a guy that was very, very productive at his last stop, Ball State. So, yeah, good interview with Jeff Grimes, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to talk to him in spring and learn more about what exactly this offense is going to look like. But I am interested to see exactly how things are going to play out. But we're going to see a lot bigger bodies on the field a lot more than we have the last couple of years, for sure. Even though they used it more last year, right? And I know 11 personnel is still his most often used personnel package, but we're going to see some other some big bodies on the field for sure. All right, Nazir Forkery looking to get another year at Wisconsin. You talked to him last week. Was that last Friday?
Wednesday night.
So almost a week ago. But he's looking for a new year. When we talked to Carter Gilmore for the swing yesterday, if anybody missed that, you can go check it out. It's a good interview. He mentioned Nazir as he's like, well, maybe I'll stick around and try to get a sixth year. I couldn't tell if he was being serious or he was joking. Irrelevant either way. Nazir trying to say that because of you talked to him, you can explain exactly what his thinking is on trying to get another year. And look, it would be huge for Wisconsin. It's also kind of funny that they're in the mix, this whole Xavier Lucas situation, which is going to probably be something that sets the market here in terms of how things are going to go. And then I should say set a precedent. And now you have this other potential precedent-setting situation with Forkery, because we've already seen Diego Pavia, which was not NCAA, it was junior college, and now you've got this. So what's his reasoning behind this?
Yeah, well, first of all, it feels as though where we've reached in college sports is the offseason is dominated by lawsuits and not anything relating to on the field, but so be it. With the Nazir Forkery situation, it's really interesting. He filed a lawsuit last Wednesday against the NCAA to try and get extra years of eligibility. Now, what he is claiming, and his lawyers in Wisconsin, is that the 2 years that he played at Division II Grand Valley State should not count against his eligibility because he was not able to maximize his NIL opportunities, and now he can. And he said that the Diego Pavia situation was kind of the impetus behind pursuing this, because Pavia in November tried to argue that he should be granted another year of eligibility since his junior college year shouldn't count against him. And he won that, and he's going to be back for another year in college. The difference to me, of course, is that that's a different organization, the Junior College Athletic Association, whereas Nazir was a part of the NCAA previously. Now, he said he felt like, based on what he had been told, that he had a good case. This is also something that's going to be decided very soon. They filed an injunctive order to make sure that it was decided by February 7th, because that's when he has to declare for the NFL draft. But what he told me is, it sounds to me like Wisconsin came to him with this in early December after he filed. So I should also say they filed a waiver with the NCAA to try and request an additional year of eligibility relating to his 2021 season at Grand Valley State. He played several games, but he said he did not play a lot of snaps and was also grieving the loss of his father, who had died that summer before. That waiver was denied, and then they proceeded to sue the NCAA. But he's been prepping like he's going to go to Pro Day on March 7th. He's going to try and be an NFL player. And he said he allowed Wisconsin and the lawyers to handle this on the back end. So it has the possibility to be another landmark case. I suppose my perspective is I'm dubious of this winning, but there are no rules. So it's possible that he could win this too. I don't know what the cutoff is on eligibility and what any of this means, because he was an NCAA player. And so we'll see.
So what you're saying is you could play 4 years at JUCO. None of it counts. Then you could play 3 years or 4 years at Division 3, then 4 years at Division 2, and then finally come up. If this were like, is that's ridiculous,
so.
right?
Well, no,
You know
I
what I'm
don't think
saying?
I don't think that's what it is. And I think there's like a 5-year window, or what the
Is
order
there?
was. Well, what the thing was with Pavia was like granting an additional year, and other people got an additional year. But like, I don't like
But he only had one.
Walker, for example.
He's got 2 years if he wants it, right?
He's got
No,
one.
just one.
Toonie
One.
Walker.
Excuse me.
So
Yeah.
I don't think this is. Well, junior college, obviously, you go for 2 years maximum, but I don't think this is some people are going to be in college for 8 or 9 years. But then again, who knows? Who knows?
No, I was just kidding. So yeah, that is interesting to see how that plays out for him. It would be obviously a huge addition for Wisconsin to get Nizier back. I thought he had a really good season. I don't think people, I think because he was so involved, because people were throwing Ricardo Hallman's way very much, he had a lot on his plate, and I thought he held up pretty well. So we'll see.
I should say one more thing I wanted to add just to clarify, because he played 2 years at Grand Valley State. He said that if he were awarded years, and I think it's just for one, but if he were awarded 2, he would only intend on pursuing 1. So just to clarify, it's not like there's going to be 2 more years of Nizier Forkurian at Wisconsin, but we'll see whether there's 1 more.
Yeah. And then there's going to be 3 Badgers at the NFL Combine later this month, as Hunter Wohler and Jack Nelson and Joe Huber all got invited to Indianapolis. I'm wondering, for you, of those 3, which one do you think which one do you think performs the best at the Combine? And then off of that, who has the best career?
Boy, that's a tough one. I'm most intrigued by Hunter Wohler because it's, I suppose, a bias of sorts. We see dozens of offensive linemen at Wisconsin get invited to a combine, have very good pro careers, but an in-state safety like that, I'm interested to see what happens with him. I think Jack Nelson will, and I think both offensive linemen will test well. They're big, strong dudes. I can see both those guys having decade-long careers. I don't know where Hunter fits into the NFL picture, but of the 3, to me, he's the most intriguing because we don't see that very often out of guys from Wisconsin. Who do we generally see being represented? It's offensive linemen, it's linebackers.
Sometimes running backs.
Yeah, those guys are good too, though.
It's been a while.
It's been a while now since JT.
Well, no. Braylon Allen.
Yeah. How can I forget?
And Isaac Garendo to an extent.
If you want to claim him, maybe Badgers fans still should.
He played 3 years. Played 3 years at Wisconsin.
He did.
He was at Wisconsin for 4 years. Never. Yeah. Either way, on that note, certainly appreciate Jeff Grimes' time, and appreciate your time, Jesse. We'll be back maybe later this week, depending on what we see, and definitely be back next week.
Sounds good. Talk soon.
All right, there he is, Jesse Temple from The Athletic. You've been listening to The Camp.